Welcome everyone to Increasing Audit Effectiveness with Data Analytics. My name is Jim Kaplan. I'm president and founder of auditnet.org, the global resource for auditors. This webinar today is being brought to you by Caseware Analytics. I'd like to introduce our speaker, Stephen Zapolsky. Stephen is a teammate market development consultant. As a training consultant, Stephen taught over 30 sessions on internal audit best practices related to internal audit department management and audit work documentation. He developed user guides and course workbooks and agendas for several applications. He also implemented and customized Teammate. Stephen brings with him not only audit experience and training, but also a strong understanding of audit software and the application of it. Before I turn the floor over to Stephen, I'd like to briefly cover the housekeeping items. You see them there on your screen right now. We are recording today's webinar, and you will receive a copy of the recording. After the webinar is over, it should be ready for distribution tomorrow. It'll be sent out in a follow-up email. We also have an evaluation that we'd like you to fill out at the end of the webinar. It helps us to continuously improve the webinars. We are operating under NASBA rules, so you must answer all of the polling questions to qualify for NASBA CPE. If you're joining us from a tablet device today, you may not be able to answer the polling questions, in which case just accumulate your answers and send them to myself in an email. That's jkaplan@auditnet.org, and I'll record your answers in our records. You can submit questions via the chat box on your screen. We'll answer them during either during the webinar or at the conclusion of the webinar. I'll be monitoring the questions and turning those over to Stephen. If we can't get to all the questions, we will answer them in a follow-up. So at this point, I'd like to thank you, and let me turn the floor over to Stephen to present the agenda and begin the presentation. Stephen?
Thank you, Jim. And if Jim, you to verify that you can hear me okay. I just want to make sure the audio is solid.
Good to go.
Okay, thank you so much. I always like to do that before any presentation just to make sure everybody can hear, and everybody should see a screen that says presentation overview on the slide. And during this presentation, I really wanted to go through and do more of an application of data analytics for auditors, opposed to going over more theory. We will have a few things, kind of preliminary concepts that we're going to go over, but we've all seen several webinars on kind of the need for data analytics, but when it comes down to how to actually deploy it on a day-to-day basis, that's where sometimes there's a gap, and that's why we wanted to focus on today performing analytics kind of on a day-to-day basis. And I will be drawing on some of my experience. In addition to teammate experience, I also have audit experience. While obtaining a master's in accounting, I worked at the Internal Revenue Service for a few years. Also worked at Macy's as a corporate internal auditor there, and we used data analytics, mainly Excel functionality to perform our data analytics. We did have ACL where we were able to pull out huge chunks of information, but then by the time it got to the auditors, it was in that Excel format. Same thing when I was working at a CPA firm. When we got information from clients, we may use an ACL or an idea to pull that information, but then by the time we used it as an auditor, it was in Excel format, and that's why we really wanted to focus on the application of data analytics. And when we think of data analytics, going through I like to go through kind of the learning objectives, but it's to show how we can use data analytics to save time, gain efficiencies, reduce risk, detect more fraud, create more opportunities for our organization. And some of these slides I'm going to move very quickly through. You do have them as part of your presentation package, so I'm not going to go over anything that you do not have. But just when we think of data analytics, no matter what publications you're reading or what type of auditing or examination processes that you have within your organization, it's really designed and organized in the four main buckets on the benefits of using data analytics. First of all, it allows your department to create opportunities that you may not currently have had prior to using data analytics through the course of your audits. Sometimes clients will, organizations will outsource certain functions like a fraud or cash recovery review, but if you're using data analytics, you're able to actually perform some of that in-house opposed to always hiring third parties. It also allows you to create opportunities to identify more issues when you're performing your audit work, because you're just able to get through volumes of data more efficiently and effectively to draw on conclusions that make sense to your stakeholders. It also creates opportunities to demonstrate your knowledge of transactions and relationship of different types of data sets, financial and non-financial. And this is very beneficial for audit departments. We're always challenged with communicating to the stakeholders of what we do and how it adds value to the organization. And when you have a detailed understanding of how information affects their world and you're able to communicate that at a detailed level, but also at a macro level, it really does create value for your department. It also allows you to save time. Majority of time, when I was new into internal audit and even external audit for that matter, a lot of time was spent formatting spreadsheets. You get the information, you put it in a spreadsheet, and then you're formatting that before you start your analysis. And I used to always think to myself, wow, I didn't get a master's in accounting to format spreadsheets. So data analytics, if you have systems that you're going to use, it can allow you to save time, audit time. It increases value for audit satisfaction. When we're able to look at information and start using those analytical skills that we've been trained to use on a day-to-day basis, it does create job satisfaction and adds value. It also adds value, tangible value. When you're performing data analytics in the course of an audit, you're able to see a little bit easier dollar amounts that affect the audit results, and we'll demonstrate that as we go through. The other thing that using analytics allows you to do is to reduce risk. And when we talk about risk, we're referring to sampling risk. So as an auditor, as you know, when you pull a sample, it's an approximate. It's not an exact representation of the population. So when you have that sampling risk, that either the sample is omitting material items or that it doesn't include all the questionable ones that you want to look at. So when you're talking to your stakeholders, when you run a sample on data, basically you're able to say with reasonable assurance that the errors resulted in this amount on the population for the area or period that we are auditing. But when you're able to look at 100% of transactions, you're able to get rid of that sampling risk. You can say with as much certainty as you possibly can that we look at 100% of the questionable transactions. These are the errors that it resulted in, and this is how you can, and then you can have an understanding of the impact. So these are kind of the benefits of data analytics. And when we talk about data analytics, everybody has a different understanding of what it is and how to use it. At its core, data analytics is just simply a process of looking at information, inspecting it, cleaning it up, modeling it to support conclusions that we make. When we have those audit findings, how do we get those findings? So we're able to provide that support through data analytics in addition to documenting the work that we perform for re-performance issue purposes to make sure that everything is documented in a clean way. So this is what data analytics is, and when we apply it to audit, one thing that we always have to keep in mind is that the data analytics tools are designed to support the audit objectives. The audit objective is not simply to use data analytics. So for example, if different clients will send me emails saying, asking for suggested tests of different data sets that they get. Payroll is a common one. I received some payroll information, what test should I perform? But that all goes back to the audit objective. I may respond that you want to start with a payroll accrual amount on the financial statements, and then you want to go through and look for classification, look at dates to make sure things are properly recognized in the right period. However, if you're performing an operational audit where you're testing payroll adjustments, making sure that raises for employees are supported, then that's going to be a separate set of tests that I'm going to recommend if that's the objective. You may pull a sample comparing prior year and current year salary amounts, looking for those increases, and then you may want to request the information differently from your IT department. Instead of just having the dollar amounts in the descriptions, now you need to know who the managers are of those individuals, so you can start looking for those approvals for the incremental increases in pay. So that's the one thing I just want to make sure that we understand is the audit objectives, the audit process drives how we use data analytics. Data analytics are tools that can create efficiencies, add value, and help us reduce sampling risk in certain cases. So there's a quick question, a polling question that we like to ask. And the question is what are cats?
We've launched the polling question, and if you could just take a moment to respond to that. We'll leave the poll open. I don't see any questions. Remember, if you have any questions, just use the chat box on your screen, and I'll be monitoring those. We have about 90% that have voted already, so we'll leave the poll open for just a little while longer. So please respond. Make sure that you get the CPE for today.
Okay.
You don't have to respond correctly, but you do have to respond to the question. So, okay, another 10 seconds, and then we'll close the polls. And we'll go ahead and we will close the polls now.
Okay.
And share the results. And it looks like the majority said computer-assisted audit techniques, which, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but that is correct.
That is correct. Yep, that's the correct answer.
Okay. I'll hide the poll, hide the results, and turn it back to you.
Thank you. So I'm glad no one said animals that go meow. But yeah, so computer-assisted audit techniques. So this is something I didn't give you that information prior to you answering the question. I have also seen computer-aided audit techniques. There's another explanation of the acronym. But CATs are tools that are used to assist you in your audits. And this really phrase is coined in the IIA standards, and we'll take a look at that. So if you were to look for kind of industry guidance on why we should use data analytics, it is part of the attribute standard explicitly, and then also part of the performance standard. So in the 1220 do professional care, if you drill down into the subsection there, it says that any automated tools such as generated audit software, test data generators, computer audit programs, specialized audit utilities, and computer-assisted audit techniques should be used with due professional care by internal auditors. So this is something where our industry, if you're in the internal audit industry, which the majority of the viewers are, this is where we have guidance on we should be using these tools or think about how to use these tools to perform our audits. And it doesn't specify a specific tool. You don't have to use the ACL. You don't have to use a teammate analytics, which we're looking at today. But we should be using something, and it should be ingrained in the audit process. And it also goes along with our performance standards. Now, for those of you in the external audit space, we have a few viewers there. In the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, we have AU Section 329, Substantive Analytical Procedures. There's some guidance here that talks about if we're performing financial audits, that we should be using some type of analytics in the course of our audits. And most commonly, we use this for ratios, current year to prior year balances, the differences, reasonability test. If you're performing financial audits, you just want to make sure that numbers look reasonable, maybe to industry standards or to prior year data. So that's where we can use analytics there. And then we also have federal government users in viewers. So if you're looking at the Yellow Book, when I was at the IRS, we had the Yellow Book published by the U.S. Government Accountability Office. And then it talks about how we need to have technical knowledge that we're using throughout the audit processes here within the general chapter 3 general standards. So at this time, I will ask one more polling question, and then we'll jump into actually looking at how to perform data analytics on a day-to-day basis. But the question is, what II standards address an internal auditor's use of data analytics? A, the attribute standards, B, the performance standards, C, the attributes and performance standards, or D, none of the above.
Okay, so please take a moment to just respond to this polling question. As soon as we get the majority voting, we'll close the polls. We've got about 30 seconds left. We have 95% have voted, so if you haven't voted yet, please record your vote. We'll be closing the poll in 5 seconds. And we'll go ahead and close the poll, share the results, and the majority said attribute and performance standards.
Excellent, and I would say that's what I had marked as the correct answer, was attributes and performance standards. The attribute standards are a little bit more specific in the use of CATs, but the performance standards talk about how to use analytics during the course of field work. So I also agree that it's the attribute and performance standards. So what is teammates? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Just wanted to close that poll.
Oh, thank you, Jim. And thank you also, Jim, for the opportunity to present. I appreciate that. So when we think about different CAT tools that are out there on the market, there are different tools that are used for different purposes. I was watching a presentation by Highwater Advisors, and they describe data analytic tools as a Swiss Army knife, where you have that big blade that's designed to carve out, to do the heavy lifting, maybe designed to carve out big chunks of data, or subsets of big chunks of data, and then you have the more specialized blades that are used for more specific reasons. And one thing we're going to be actually talking about data analytics using teammate analytics. And so, what is teammate analytics? Teammate analytics really has really falls under the not only a specialized tool, but it encompasses several specialized tools. It has over 150 tools that are designed specifically for auditors and accountants to use. It's just not a data, if you Google, a search for data analytics, you may come back with engineers that use analytics. You may come back with statisticians that use analytics processes. Well, teammate analytics is actually designed for the everyday auditor. And it runs on top of Excel, so it's a robust data analytics system that runs on top of Excel. One reason why I like Teammate Analytics, it doesn't require you to go to a separate system interface. You're going to see that you just open up Excel and you're able to see Teammate Analytics. And it's designed for auditors of all IT skill levels. So Teammate Analytics is not for only the specialist, but it's for the end user, the everyday auditor. Like I mentioned earlier in my background, when I received information as an internal auditor, external auditor, working for the IRS, I received that information in Excel format. So we wanted to provide, Teammate Analytics is a tool that can be used by anyone of all IT skill sets. And that's what we're going to be using to perform our data analytics today. Now, there's different, like I mentioned earlier with the payroll example, if you were to give me that payroll information, depending on your audit objective, will determine how I perform my audit and the work. Now, if you're just starting to use data analytics within your organization, some low-hanging fruit to see some tangible results, purchasing, payroll, expense transactions, time cards, journal entries, textual analytics. So these are some tools that you can use to kind of get some immediate results when you're using data analytics, especially if you haven't used it prior to using any type of software. Now, I'm going to give you some examples on how I go about, how I have in the past, or how I've heard other audit departments go about auditing these different areas, and I'm going to use Teammate Analytics to do that. However, whatever your audit objective is, just as many viewers, we have 236 people in the webinar. If I was to give you some information, some accounts payable information, there'd probably be 237 different ways of looking at that, and different conclusions and ways that you want to slice and dice it. So I'm just going to show you a few examples, but of course the sky's the limit on how you view this information. Now, one of the struggles of using Excel to perform data analytics is getting information into Excel. So there's several ways that you can pull information into Excel. If you request data from your IT guys and they give you Excel or a CSV file, then you can just open that up right into Excel. But if you have other data sources, you can go through, and there's Power Query, for example, where you can map out to a SQL database. You can go through to an Oracle database or other databases that Excel supports. However, the likelihood of your IT department allowing you to pull that information to map right into the live database is not very likely. And then you also have to know how to write scripts for all of these different databases to pull that information if you don't have your IT department provided. The most other frequently used format for getting information for your audits is PDF. So if I was to look at some sales information, I'll open up a PDF here. So right here I have some dummy data. It's sales information, invoice references. We have date fields, quantity, unit prices. I may request this for a variety of reasons. I may want to make sure that my invoices are from legitimate suppliers. I may want to go through, in this case it's sales information, maybe I want to do a ghost check to make sure that all the employees are legitimate, that the invoices, I may want to do an address to pull a sample here to compare the salesperson addresses to the invoices to make sure that they're not being sent to the salesperson or third-party relationships or anything of that nature. So that's where I can get this information. But if I want to put this into Excel, pretty much my only option is just to highlight it and paste it in here. As you can see, if I do that, this information is pretty much useless. So one of the things that I want to do is I want to actually pull in information from that PDF, and using Teammate Analytics, we have the import wizard. So what I can do is browse out to this report and pull that right into Excel. And now you can see that I have this information in Excel, and it's in a usable way. I have the dates, and we always provide, Teammate Analytics always provides a screenshot showing you what was performed with some text there. But I can see very quickly, I have the information. Now I can start slicing and dicing it. Another thing that I like to do once I get information into Excel is to visualize it. So there's a quick visualizer in Teammate Analytics where I can go through, if I wanted to see my date ranges, I can go and see I have current year and prior year data. I can go through and also look at these by name. So who has the most sales, the invoices associated with the sales individuals that are outstanding. And I can go through what products are represented. We have an even amount of products. And once I can visually see the information that I have, that's when I start drilling down to the details to start pulling out specific transactions. I can quickly create a pivot chart from this, see the different individuals' names. You can do different things. If I wanted to sort this, because in Excel we use Teammate Analytics uses Excel functionality. If I want to see my largest to my smallest or my smallest to my largest, I can go through and resize that, and the charts update automatically. If I wanted to go through and then open up a couple of different salespeople, maybe I want to do the top two, then I can do a multi-select and just put that into a different sheets or put them into the same sheet. So now I can start drilling down into these details, requesting the details behind this to start performing my test. And just to walk through kind of some more functionality at a high level of Teammate Analytics, I'm going to open up some payables. So payables are, this is the low-hanging fruit area that we're going to go over. If you were to receive a payable listing in Excel from a system, from your IT department, a lot of times that information comes over jumbled, and that's really how we have Teammate Analytics set up in a way that allows you to walk through the process to analyze data, to perform audit steps, and to start requesting that support. So we have that data preparation area, which we talked about, the import wizard, going through and importing PDFs, print files, things that Excel functionality does not currently offer. And then you can clean up the information. As I mentioned earlier, I didn't get a master's degree in accounting to clean up spreadsheets. So the more that you can automate this process for your auditors, job satisfaction, retention goes up, for your department. So right now I have information, I have post dates that came over as numbers instead of dates, so I can use Teammate Analytics to quickly clean that up. So now I can see that information as dates opposed to the numbers. We have supplier names that came over. So for my supplier names, they came over in proper case. Oftentimes they'll come over with uppercase and lowercase letters once next to each other. But we may have some standardization that we want to show in our audit work and subsequent reporting that we perform out of this audit work. So for example, Marco Buffalo Ltd, we don't like to see those acronyms, and we don't like to see the names with proper case. We want to see everything in uppercase, and we want to see things spelled out. So what I can do is I can use Teammate Analytics to clean that up and normalize those fields. I can go through, select the supplier name, I can convert everything to uppercase. I want to substitute my words, so I already have my acronyms listed out. So now you'll see that everything is now uppercase, and where I had LTD, it's now spelled limited. So this allows you to, if you have acronyms, organizations are notorious for acronyms, but when you're generating an audit report, you usually don't want to use those acronyms for the issues and different things that you identify. So that way, if you have external auditors or regulators looking at your work and relying on your work, they're able to clearly see what was performed. I have invoice reference information that came over with spaces in between the items. So I want to quickly go through and remove all those spaces. It never fails. Whenever I got information as an auditor from an IT department, usually they always had special characters that you had to go through and get rid of. You may have a dollar sign or a pound sign. So Teammate Analytics allows you to quickly identify those symbols, identify the spaces, and get rid of that to start your analysis. Now, we talked about earlier, once you go through and kind of clean everything up, one of the things I always like to do is visualize my information. We have all the different types of analysis you can perform right here. There's over 150 types of analysis, but for the quick visualizer, this just allows you to see that information. A picture's worth 1,000 words. And if I wanted to look at those transactions by supplier name, I can see what suppliers have the majority of the transactions. I can copy this, put it into a PowerPoint. I can copy it as an image, as a chart. I can create a chart or do the pivot as we talked about earlier. But just navigating through this information, this also allows you to make sure that you have what you asked for is what you got. If I just requested Q1 information, January through March, I can see that they also provided April and May. If I did truly request January through May, then that's reflected here. And then I can also look at this information in different ways visually. I want to look at this by quarters, not just by the month. So I can add that extra level of context to this information, and I can go ahead and create a pivot chart from that and then see all my Q1 and Q2. Now, pivot charts are so helpful for auditors, but I know when I was an auditor, I avoided them because I didn't understand how to use them. But once I learned how to use them, I was hooked. And so what we do is we create a lot of, Teammate Analytics creates a lot of the guesswork out of there for you. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that and go back to my master list of data. And the other thing that we have are section modules. And this is really another thing that makes Teammate Analytics stand out. Predefined tests based off of the information that you're looking at. If I'm looking at non-current assets, we already have predefined tests for the auditors to use. Now, this does not mean that you have to use every test. It depends on what your audit objective is. Right now, I have mine called trade payables, but it could be considered your accounts payables. This may be purchases if you're looking at purchases, and there's tests in here that you can use to assist you in your audit. So these are the ones that we see the most commonly used tests for accounts payables. I can look at my payables according to my aging schedule. I'm going to choose my invoice date here, and you can even define your aging bands. Right now I have 30-day increments. You can have custom bands. I was talking with a nonprofit organization where they received grant money, and it had to be used within a certain date, so they looked for any grant monies that were over, I think, 90-day bands to see if it was outstanding, what opportunities they missed. So it doesn't have to be just accounts payable that you're using aging for. You can use it for any purpose. And then I can always choose an aging reference date and have that be exported to a pivot table. We can look for duplicate transactions. If I want to pull duplicate transactions by invoice, I want to look at transactions over a certain amount. I put a materiality in here as $300,000. I'm going to put $15,000, or I can pull debit transactions. Invoices without purchase orders. We can relate those to different transaction types, or items that are posted on certain days. A lot of organizations are closed on Saturday and Sunday. You should not see postings on those days. So you may want to pull those out to start taking a deeper dive into those areas, or transactions posted on certain days. If I have my holiday listing, I can pull that in here, or you can just put in days. If we know that January 1st, we'll just put New Year's. I can put that date in here. And then it's going to pull out any transaction on those days that we were closed. I can look at transactions around a certain date if we're performing cutoff testing for classification. Then we can do that, not classification, but for proper period recognition. I can look at transactions posted between times. If we're not open until 8 a.m. and we close at 8 p.m., I want to look at those transactions posted before that time and after that time. So it's allowing me to look at 100% of my transactions, or by users. If I wanted to perform a test that any transaction over $30,000 or above has to be approved by a manager. So that's testing one of our approval policies. Or I can look at transactions with rounded amounts, or even add column statistics, and I'm just going to run everything here and I'll explain what that means. But through data analytics, I'm able to take and perform multiple tests on accounts payable information very quickly. So what Teammate Analytics is doing is performing the test on those transactions, and it's going to place them in a nice summary for me. So here I can see the aging, all the summary information, the number of records, total invoice amounts. I can scroll down and we have a nice screenshot of exactly what was performed for reperformance purposes, and then we have a listing of all the details of what was performed. And we have the source data statistics that we can take a look at. It shows us all the individual schedules, and then we have the pivots. So then we can use those pivot tables. We don't have to do all the legwork of actually creating the pivot, but we can utilize the functionality that's there. If I wanted to add a little bit more context, I can see who's posting transactions on Sunday and Saturday, and I can go ahead and just add that context right here. And this is showing me that Helen has posted 8 of those transactions, so I can start drilling down into that detail. And just like we have the chart on the front end within Teammate Analytics, if I wanted to use Excel's functionality to create charts, it's certainly there as well on the back end. So this allows you through Teammate Analytics to go through and to test transactions very, very efficiently and effectively based off those predefined tests that we have. And we have predefined tests for accounts payables, inventory, journal entries, expenses, and we'll talk about the lead scheduler here in a second. So now let's take a look at some other functionality that's helpful to use when you're performing your audits. When I was an auditor, one of the common things that I would do is compare two system outputs. So if I was performing system access testing, where I wanted to make sure that all the individuals that are on system access listing are current employees. So I may have an HR output that has my employee or my current employee listing, and I want to compare that to the individuals who have system access to make sure permanent employees aren't still on that list. Or let's compare that to job changes.
Stephen?
Yep.
Let me just break in here quickly. We've had a couple of questions come in, and I just want to address them before we get too much farther. Number one, what version of Excel are you using?
This is 2013.
Okay. And
but I will add this one thing. So with Teammate Analytics, you can use prior versions of Excel. It doesn't have to be 2013. I believe it can go all the way back to 2007.
Okay, and thinking back to when you were importing that PDF file,
Yep.
David asked, is the import process really that easy?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the import process, it's very easy to use. I don't know if you've used any other type of systems, David, but this is very, very intuitive. You can go through and you can open up the file that you want to import. and then you can go through and map out what you want to pull in. And we make it very simple. We understand auditors are using these, not programmers or developers. So it's very easy to use. You can just go through and highlight sections. So if I want to pull this information in, I can add that as a field, mark it as a date field, and pull it in. So it's a very easy to use system designed for auditors. It's not designed for the specialist or IT gurus, but the end user.
Okay. And Kyle asked a question, and this one, I know it's difficult to address this, but Kyle wanted to know what Teammate cost, and I believe that Teammate Analytics is a standalone product. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep. You can use Teammate Analytics by itself. We have actuaries, and we do have some statisticians that do use it. So they don't have our audit management system, where our control management system is truly standalone, and then we are able to integrate it with our audit management system as well, and our other systems as well. So anywhere that you open up Excel, that's where you'll see Teammate Analytics.
Okay. And then a final question that came in. Porus asked if Teammate Analytics is available with industry-specific tests, like for airline, oil and gas, government.
Yeah, and that's another thing. So I mean, AuditNet has industry-specific tests out there on this website, and the idea is to take a look at what your audit objective is, what information you're looking at, and how can you use analytics to accomplish the test that you're trying to perform, and give you the results that you expect or unexpect. So that's where within Teammate Analytics, well, even though I went through accounts payables, all of those tests that we perform can also be performed as standalone tests, in addition to being captured in those section modules. So we don't have industry-specific like phrasing or groups of testing built in, but you're able to use the tools that we do have to accomplish the testing for the audit objective that you're trying to achieve.
Okay, let me let you get back to the presentation, and then we've got more questions that are coming in, but you go ahead and proceed.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate that. So let's go ahead and talk about those tests where you have two system outputs. Another common test where I would perform that is when I was comparing addresses of the vendors to the employees. So I have two system outputs here. I have a supplier master file that came from our accounting system, and then I have an employee master file. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up both of those. So just taking a look at the information that's being presented, we have one supplier master file that has the supplier name, the account code, the addresses, and then we have an employee master file that has the name, the addresses, telephone numbers, etc. So one of the things that I like to do is compare that. In Teammate Analytics, there is functionality called joining sheets, where you can take two system outputs to compare different fields. So I can take that employee master file and choose to compare the addresses to the supplier master file and look at those addresses. Now I can pick and choose if I want additional columns that match. I can have the outputs be determined. I can customize that. Do I want just the name and the addresses to show? Do I want everything to show? And what information do I want to pull out? Just records that match different sheets of information, and you can even use fuzzy matching. That's where if one person in one system spells the road out to be 800 Maple Drive, they spell out Drive, and then in the other system they put 800 Maple Drive, the acronym DR, then I want to look at the approximates there to pull out any approximate matches as well. So what I can do is just click a button, and I'm able to see here are the matches. So I have a match. I have a nice summary shot of the image showing me what was selected in addition to a comment. And you can even make these comments headers automatically if you want to use them as a work paper. So it creates a nice clean work paper. I just put my name in here of the company, different information there. Okay. And then down below I can see that match. We have Henry Thorne, who's an employee, also set up as a supplier. And I can see that supplier code HTH. So one of the things that I can do is go back to my payables listing, and if I wanted to go through here and look for HTH, I can. I'll just do a quick search for that. Now one thing you'll see is if I wanted to pull out all the supplier codes for Henry Thorne to see the extent of the fraudulent activity, I can use what we call quick extract that we added into the right click. It's part of Teammate Analytics. And no matter what cell I have selected, it's going to take that information and all the related information and put it into a new sheet for me. So now I can see the extent of the fraudulent activity. Another thing that I like to do is look at the information in several ways. And instead of going through and looking at it by supplier code, just doing that quick, Control F or find, search for that, I want to look at it according to my summary. We have a quick summary. And this is very helpful to not only look at the information for the audit, but it never fails that an audit manager, the auditor will prepare something, give it to the manager, and they'll say, have you thought about this? Or I want to see this information. So I'm able to look at information in several different ways. If I wanted to look at the supplier code, and I wanted to look at the amounts, and I'm going to look at, we'll say, the sum of the total amounts for that employee. I also want to take and look not only about the amounts, but I want to look at the number of transactions. I want to look at the highest dollar transaction, the lowest dollar transaction, the average dollar transaction for that. So you're able to see multiple layers of information for the suppliers at the click of a button. And now I can go through and see that not only for all my suppliers, but that HTH that we saw earlier right here, and start drilling down into those details. But I can go ahead, before I show a few other things, I can answer a few more questions. Jim?
Let me get those questions to you.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Audrey asked if she likes to work off of predefined section modules. How would it work if they wanted to add additional steps to perform on payables data, such as split transactions testing? Does Teammate support available to help work through building new analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have several types of analytics built in, but for that specific one, we do have split transaction test built in as well. So that's where if I'm looking at those expense, and we're going to cover that here in a bit. So I'll actually show you that in a bit. But we do have split transaction testing built in.
Okay, and what about the performance of Excel when you're using big data, more than 500,000 rows?
Yeah, absolutely. So Excel, the current version of Excel supports 1,048,000 rows of information, approximately. And Teammate Analytics, it's not a, it's not an Excel add-in. It's actually an analytics system that runs on top of Excel. So what we're doing is if you have, hundreds of thousands of rows of data and you were to build out an Excel formula, if you run that formula, most of the time that formula will break or you'll get inconsistencies in Excel. But within Teammate Analytics, anytime that we're running our analytics, we're actually taking that information, taking it out to an array, crunching the numbers, and putting it back to results. And you just see that as at the click of a button. But we stress test all our functionality on all 1,048,000 rows of information.
Okay, and two more questions here. Mark wants to know if you can change the standard test.
Yeah, so currently you're not able to change the standard test, but that is going to be something that our developers are looking at now to put in the next release of Teammate Analytics. We do a release historically we like to do one about once every 6 to 8 months, but with Teammate Analytics we do them about every 4 months historically now. But yeah, that's something where we're looking at being able to rename the items, maybe group them in different buckets so that way you can pick and choose kind of the things that you want to run. We don't want to allow scripting of Teammate Analytics because then that goes against our ease of use for everyday auditors. Then you have to have specialized knowledge and training, and 99% of the 60,000 users of Teammate Analytics today require no training. Okay. They're able to watch a few YouTube videos, we have some help guides, and they're able to get up and running.
Okay, and I know where this question is coming from, but does Teammate Analytics have a log file so that you or another auditor can reperform the test? And this is typically a tool that you find in like Caseware IDEA or ACL.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have right here, we have the visual. So for the section modules, those come with visuals automatically. Within D1, we have a visual right here of what was selected, and then we have the text kind of describing what was performed, the test that was performed.
Okay, great. Back to you.
All right, thank you so much. So let's talk about a couple of other things. Going back to the payable transactions, you can also pull out outliers. So this is where you can pull out information. I'll go ahead and pull out amounts. I won't say where I was an auditor, but I was an auditor prior to working for Teammate, and we had an instance where it was pretty interesting. We had some interns, and instead of putting the summer rate for the 3 months that they worked, they put that at the hourly rate. And needless to say, they got a big paycheck. So what are some tests that we can perform to kind of pick up on those things? And the outliers test is great. I've also seen the outliers test used for adjunct professor salaries in nonprofit organizations and college universities to kind of pull out those maybe those adjunct professors that are being paid above others to start drilling down into those details. So sometimes it's just helpful to see those outliers. And if I wanted to pull out outliers for amount, I can choose to pull out 3 times the average or 3 times the standard deviation above average. But what I can do is just quickly see any of these financial columns. Here are the items. I can see how many times the average they are. All the results are produced. I will mention this since we had some questions earlier. The headers are coming from the information that I'm looking at. So if I had different additional rows of information, different titles, that's what you would see right here in these summary pages or the output pages. So you're going to see the exact data headers that you have, and then we add some results to the right, the averages, times of the averages, a test that was performed. Some other things that we'll look at include the lead scheduler. So that's where I'll go ahead and open up. We'll open up our trial balance. So sometimes you need to see information summarized by groupings very quickly. A great instance of that is when you're looking at a trial balance. So within our trial balance, if I was to receive this trial balance, when I was an external auditor, I used to get the trial balance, create a summary page, create hyperlinks in Excel, and then if you change something, it was a complete, it took a long time to be able to really organize this in a way that's useful for the audit, and then you're creating the lead pages and making everything look pretty. So what we have within Teammate Analytics is called a lead scheduler, where if I wanted to go ahead and compare prior year and current year, I'll include an analytical review here. So I'm going to have this group the transaction or group the accounts by type, and then also include an analytical review that compares current year and prior year balances. So right now I have this nice lead sheet that I just created from that trial balance. I have the trial balance listed, and then we have links to the different tabs that were created. So it created all this nice header for me, the descriptions, the variances, that automatically calculated those. We have our nice work paper reference. And if you're using our audit management or Teammate's audit management system, you can do the point-to-point hyperlink to specific cells here. But at the click of a button, you can at least have a starting point for starting to drill down into the details of your work papers. Some other things that you can do with Teammate Analytics include sampling. So sometimes you just simply have to perform sampling. Most often when I used it in the past, it was through inventory purchases. So, we have basic sampling if you want to use that within Teammate, like a random sample. I can pull out, okay, show me, 5 items. Or you can even do subsets. You can do cluster sampling. So let's say that I wanted to pull one transaction from each item or part number. Then I can pull those by the different columns that are reflected. But instead of using the random sampling, I'm going to use monetary unit sampling. So monetary unit sampling requires a little bit more expertise to use. The everyday auditor is not equipped with the mathematical calculations that go into this and how to evaluate the results. So this is something that we added specifically for auditors. I'm going to go ahead and estimate and extract a sample here. So monetary unit sampling gives higher dollar amount items a greater chance of being selected. That's the 30,000-foot view explanation of monetary unit sampling. So we have $24 million of items. And then I'm going to say required liability 85%. There's different guides that tell you what this should be. You may internally have a guide, so that's what you're going to use. I said the material error value is 300,000. I'm actually going to put 2 million here since we have a large data set. And then I'm going to put the expected error of 300,000. So I can go through and extract a sample size. And Teammate Analytics does the rest. So it's going to extract that sample for you. And I didn't highlight that, but there are several thousands of items here within that view. But we have a nice extraction report that tells you what was performed. We have the high dollar value amounts, because remember the purpose of monetary unit sampling is giving greater dollar amounts a higher chance of being selected, so we definitely want to pull out the highest one. And then we have the remaining 29. And all of these headers are going to be whatever the heading of information that you have. Now I can go through and look at the book value here, and then I can see the audit value. So if I'm performing my audit, and let's say this is $7,000 instead of $6,000, we have $1 instead of $120, or maybe $120.20. You can go through and put the actual value in there, and then we evaluate those results for you. So like I said, this is something that usually requires quite a bit of training for the auditors to be able to perform, and you can have anyone perform monetary unit sampling just right out of the box, and you can evaluate those results. Now my results, I have what was performed at the top. It's protected. You see that. And we have the items below high value and above high value. And then we have a nice conclusion with 85% reliability is not overstated more than 2.5 or understated more by 1.5. Now, if it is, then we have a nice warning that pops up and lets you know. And then we have another kind of a paragraph that tells you what the next steps are or what you should be considering. The last thing that I'll show you before we open up questions, and I can always show you more, there's tons to show, is when you're looking at expenses. So if I'm looking at expenses, I'm going to run two kind of expense tests here. Yeah, I'll do this before the expenses. We'll look at this journal entry testing, because this is something that is very valuable for auditors as well. When I was an auditor and I was looking at pre-numbered checks or journal entries, anything that a system pre-numbers, so you should have a complete record, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever that format may be, then one of the things that you would do is spend a lot of time on is making sure that you had a complete population, or your complete sample, I should say, before you started to do more detailed testing. So when I was an auditor, if I was looking for journal entries for a given month, I would request those. I would show up, they would give me a spreadsheet, and then I would take that information and I would have to build out calculations to figure out if I have gaps, or I may eyeball it depending on the size of the report. But normally I didn't do it right away because I had other important field work to do. I would wait till I got back to the office and start then drilling down into the details. And that process would take hours to perform. It would be drawn out over the course of weeks. So within Teammate Analytics, we have a gap analysis where I can go through any type of pre-numbered information. You can put your own format in here. So I have character, number, number. And what I'm able to do is just click a button, and I can see right away what items I have missing. I can give this to the person that I've requested the information from, the auditee, and they can start seeing, backpedaling or providing those responses. So now let's go ahead and take a look at expenses, and I'm going to look at expenses a couple of different ways. First, I'm just going to look at expenses, and one of the things that you always hear about and that we read about is Benford's analysis. And Benford's analysis is simply analysis that that says that certain numbers should occur at a higher percentage or a higher rate than others. I don't have time to go into the details of the methodology behind that, but if you were trying to use Excel to build to perform Benford's analysis, I mean, you can do it. And I've watched demonstrations. It takes about 20 minutes to 30 minutes, even for an expert to do it, or someone who's very well versed in Excel. So we go ahead and take the guesswork for your auditors, and they're able to perform first, second, third, first and second digit of Benford's analysis. We have the variance analysis, the z-testing, the mean absolute difference. That's where you're able to use that if you have reoccurring payments. So they're going to be a statistical anomaly. So you can go through and pull those out. But to perform Benford's analysis, let's say that I'm performing expense testing that anything over $50 has to be approved by a manager or above. Then I want to see if someone's splitting those transactions. And we actually have a split functionality or analysis, but I can show you later if we have time. But this just shows me for the digit 10, here's my sample occurrence, here's Benford's prediction. If this makes sense to you on the call, then I just wanted to show you that it's there. I will go into a detailed explanation of what they mean. But we also provide a chart showing you the variances. So I can see right here that that number 49 occurs at a higher rate. And because we create pivot tables for you, I can then go into the details of those items and start drilling down into the details of the transactions. Now, sometimes when you get this information, you want to go ahead and analyze it, but because it's a pivot table, it doesn't allow you to do that. So within Teammate Analytics, we have the ability to convert pivot tables to tables, which will allow you then to do the quick sorting of the items, and then you can perform different analysis and do different things of that nature. And then we also have the expense testing modules. That's where if you wanted to truly run the split transaction test, then we have those predefined for you. I can show you that looking at the expenses. You can see the split transactions. So if I wanted to see potentials for split transactions, I'll just run it. I won't explain all the other tests that we have because we don't have time. But if I wanted to just run and look for those split transactions, those potentials, it's going to look for reference numbers that are the same, dates that are the same, so different types of criteria, and show you the potential splits. There's other things that you can do. The last thing I'll mention is textual analytics. That's where if I'm going back to the journal entries, we can go ahead and take a look at those, or we'll say the expenses. Then I can pull out certain words or extract certain words and phrases. So let's say that I wanted to look for the word bribe, something very, very apparent that I can go through and just, it'll search the entire workbook for me, the sheet or the workbook, and it's going to look for that word bribe. It's going to show me everywhere where it contains the word bribe. And one of the benefits is you can upload predefined lists. So there was an AuditNet presentation a few months ago where it was a great presentation where they took the most commonly used textual analytic words used by audit departments, and there you can see statistics on how often they're used. So I actually pulled them in, those that are used higher or above. It took me 2 seconds to create the list, but I'm able to even pull from lists. So let's say instead of adding a word, I want to add from a stored list, and I want to pull those in used by AuditNet, and they can search those, and everywhere it contains that word, it'll show me that. But at this time, I can answer any other questions that you may have. I'll go back to the slide deck real quick. So for the slide deck, there's some examples of different types of analysis that you can perform. One last polling question: what is the benefit of using CATs? So I think we should answer that polling question.
Okay, I've launched that polling question. Please take a moment to answer that, and then we've got a few questions that have come in. Let me try to cover those with you now. Catherine wanted to know, what's the system requirement for Teammate Analytics?
Yeah, we can provide, if you're interested, I have a contact slide at the bottom that I'll show you after the polling question. But it's, like I said, I believe it's Excel 2007 and above is the main requirement for Teammate Analytics.
Okay, and then let me see.
And being in an Excel, add-in, I will mention for that as well. Being an Excel add-in, you know, it's being used by departments and organizations that only have Excel. They don't have any other Teammate products. So if you meet the Excel requirements, you're going to meet the Teammate Analytics requirements.
Okay, there's a lot of questions that are coming in now on cost, and I know that Teammate Analytics has a free 30-day evaluation available, so I don't know if you want to cover cost.
Yeah, I can go through some of that now. Is it all right to move from the polling slide?
Okay, hang on one second. Let me. Okay, we've got 92%. We'll keep it open for another 10 seconds if you want to vote. And if not, we're going to close the poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Poll is closed. Share the results. And the majority said, let's see, where are we here?
All the above, I think.
All the above, okay.
That's perfect.
Let me go ahead and hide that, and then you can show back to your screen.
Okay, I have a list of references here that's in the slide deck. But yeah, if you have questions, if you go to teammatesolutions.com, that's where we have access to the 30-day trial of Teammate Analytics. For pricing, if you have pricing questions, just go ahead and send me an email, steven.zapolsky@walterskluwer.com, and we can get that information for you. It just ranges on how many users you anticipate that you have. And we have different prices for different groups of users. And also, if you're a teammate, if you're using our audit management system, there's also a discount as well. So that's something where if you just reach out to me, I can provide that pricing information for your organization.
Okay, and well, somebody's asking about teammate audit management cost without the analytics product. So they're asking for standalone pricing for teammate audit management, which is really not something that we planned on covering today, but
yeah, it's a similar concept where it's based off the number of users that you have, auditors that you have. The nice thing about teammate or audit management system is it's only for the auditors. You can have issue recommendation owners that access the system or provide comments, or if you need to provide access to external third parties, you don't need licenses for those individuals. So if you just reach out to me via email, I can get you that information.
Okay, and one last question here. Mark said that you indicated it only takes a couple of seconds to perform certain activities, but are you not an expert? And obviously, the more familiar you are with software, the easier it becomes to run certain tests. But I can tell you from my knowledge of Teammate Analytics, it's very easy to get up and running because you already know how Excel operates.
Yeah, and we actually had a college and university that gave this to their interns on day one. They watched the YouTube videos for about an hour, and they were able to perform audit tests and understand them. They said it decreased the training time for those interns by about 2 weeks because they're using analytics, they're using Excel, things that they're already familiar with. So it's a very powerful tool.
Okay, and one last question here. Is there training for various modules? And I think you mentioned that there are videos that are available.
Yep, there's YouTube videos that are available. Like I said, 99% of the 60,000 users of Teammate Analytics do not require formalized training. Most of our training is regarding data analytics in general, on when to use it type of thing, opposed to a specific, training on just Teammate Analytics.
Excellent. Well, Stephen, I want to thank you today for today's presentation. This was excellent, and I think you've opened the minds of a lot of the people that attended today's webinar in terms of the ease of using analytics with a tool like this. So I want to thank you very much and remind everyone that we will be sending out a link to the recording tomorrow, as well as the CPE certificates if you answered all the polling questions. So I want to wish you all a good day. And Steve, if you have any last minute comments you want to make?
I just want to thank you, Jim, just for having us and for all the work that AuditNet does and our partnership with AuditNet that Teammate has. And we just appreciate the opportunity to show you how you can hopefully ease the burden of your data analytics that you have within your organizations.
Well, it's easy to be a partner with an organization like Teammate, so thank you. All right, have a great day, everyone.